Hello, everyone. Earlier in the year, we did a couple of quizzes on restrictive elements, and I provided this handout. I made the handout, so of course I like it and think it's good, but I understand that it's not enough to really answer everyone's questions. I think it would be helpful to hear me pronounce some of the things on here. So please study the handout if you haven't yet, and then maybe come back and watch this video. So the restrictive elements are necessary to a sentence's meaning and they can't be removed. All right, a way to think of that is that in conversation, there would be no pause, no stopping there. So, for example, you shouldn't drink water that contains toxins. Water that contains toxins is acting like one noun. Even though it's water that contains toxins, it's being treated as a noun, something that could act as a subject or object, a doer or receiver. Water that contains toxins. Okay? We could not say which here because which would be non-restrictive. It would be non-essential, unessential information. If I said you shouldn't drink water, which contains toxins, I'm basically saying you shouldn't drink water ever. And by the way, you might want to know all water contains toxins. Now, of course, in this case, that's not true. Water does not always contain toxins. Water that contains toxins is restrictive because it restricts or limits the water we're talking about. In other words, as we see with the explanation, what kind of water should you avoid? You should avoid water that contains toxins. Okay? So notice that these non-restrictive and restrictive clauses and elements are not just something in writing. They appear in speech, and commas and the absence of commas are just a way in writing to show what you would normally hear. Okay, so let's go down and look quickly at the non-restrictive elements. You'll notice that the non-restrictive elements are things we could remove. So example 2, let's take a look here. Our board of directors has recently implemented several policies which cut costs. Okay, this information which cut costs could be removed if we wanted to remove it. We could remove it if we wanted to, I should say. Okay. What did the board of directors do? It implemented several policies. By the way, you might want to know those policies cut costs, non-restrictive. Okay, if I take that same sentence in conversation or in writing, remove the comma, and say that cut costs, we're no longer talking about policies. We're specifically talking about policies that cut costs. The phrase is now acting like, clause is now acting like a noun. Okay. Our board of directors has recently implemented several policies that cut costs. That all goes together, okay? But several policies which cut costs, notice there's a pause there, and which cut costs is not essential to identifying the type of policies we're talking about. Okay. A very common and important type of non-restrictive clause or phrase is what's called an appositive phrase. An appositive phrase renames something. So, for example, Paul, my handsome and charming teacher, is making a video. Okay, so Paul is making a video. That's the heart of this sentence. My handsome and charming teacher is optional information that you would only include for someone who doesn't know who Paul is. Okay? Paul, my handsome and charming teacher, is making a video. Paul is making a video. Okay? Where this can be a little bit confusing for people sometimes is with the word or. So let's say in one case, there's a man named John Smith. In another case, there's a man named John Jones, and there's another man who's older named William Smith. Okay, so in the first case, John Smith, excuse me, sorry about that. John or Mr. Smith will help you. Okay, so or Mr. Smith is an appositive phrase. It's a phrase that renames John. In other words, we have one person here. John will help you. John or Mr. Smith will help you. It's okay to omit the or here, but it's important to recognize that it's common in English with that pause and those two commas. The or here doesn't mean you have two choices. It means or, as people also call him sometimes. John, or as people also sometimes call him, Mr. Smith, will help you. John, or Mr. Smith, will help you. Okay, let's take a look at something that looks similar but is actually not the same. In the second case, we have no commas, and we would read this as John or Mr. Smith will help you. So not John or Mr. Smith will help you, but John or Mr. Smith will help you. Notice the difference here is we have two people, John Jones or William Smith. Okay, John might be younger, so we call him John. Maybe Mr. Smith, William, is older, so we call him Mr. Smith. The important thing to recognize is that or here really means you have two choices, and the sentence really does require both people. I know this is a complex topic and it's impossible to address all of your questions in a short video like this, but I hope that this has at least helped a little bit to clear things up for you. If you'd like to practice more with these, there are 2 quizzes in our Google Classroom on restrictive and non-restrictive clauses and phrases, non-restrictive and restrictive elements, you may also call them. All right, I will make additional practice if necessary.